All righty. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Patty Hirschfeld. I'm with the Northwest PBIS Network, and my colleague and friend Ines Rialoba will be talking to you about the work we've done actually over the last 3 years with student engagement. In fact, we just had our third anniversary of the event yesterday, so we were able to work with students and have some even fresher ideas. So we're going to talk about TFI feature 1.15, student engagement. And I'll just quickly read the definition. I don't know who's transitioned to the new TFI, but there are definitely some changes, and I'm sure you're aware of that, and thus you're on this call. But when we're talking about student engagement, first of all, I want to celebrate the fact that this TFI feature is now its own standalone feature. Unlike in the TFI 2.1, where it included family, community, and students, now the student engagement piece has its own priority, which I think is a huge celebration. So, what we want to look for or strive for with this particular feature, the Tier 1 leadership team purposefully and regularly engage students that are representative of the school's demographics, any marginalized groups in co-designing and actually revising content and implementation of those foundational Tier 1 practices. And in order to score a 4, and I just want to shoot for the stars to get us started, um, we would need to have a representative group of students actively engaged in the selection and interpretation of school and community data, provide input on the development or implementation of foundational Tier 1 practices at least twice a year. And if the data indicate a problem, then an action plan is developed to adjust the practices so that we meet the goals and outcomes we're looking for. So I'm going to hand it over to Ines to talk about how we've put this particular feature into practice.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Whoops, sorry, skipped a slide. So just a little bit about our district. The Juvenile Court and Community Schools in San Diego covers covers all of San Diego County schools. And so what it is that when schools have have expelled any students for truancy, sometimes it can be for some when they're incarcerated, they're referred to from their local schools. They will potentially go to some of our regional schools. And so if you look here, we have North, San Pasqual Academy, which is specifically for a lot of our youth that have been removed from their homes. So it's kind of a foster care students who have been impacted with the foster system. We have East Region, Metro Region, South Region. Those are all community school sites in different areas of San Diego County. Our Monarch School is actually a school for students and families who have been impacted by homelessness. Our SOAR Youth Transition Center and SOAR East Mesa Detention Facility, those are actually our detention facilities where students transfer in there. Now, when they get released, they go into our community sites. Many of our schools are marginalized students, but we also have students, pregnant minor programs. We also have two schools, one school in the north and one in the east that are called the safe schools. Those are for a lot of our students who have been trafficked. And so we have independent study programs in each of these regions as well. So our programs are very vast and really accommodate a lot of the situations and challenges that our students and families face today. So just wanted to give you a quick background. And our Authentically Engaging Youth event actually started in 2024. That was our first year. And this was it right here. And so Patty said, hey, let's bring our students together. This was an experience that she had before. And let's bring it to JCCS, have them look at some of our office discipline referrals, all our minors. And so what we do is we cut the data, put the kids into groups. And this one was a luncheon where we brought in the adults where they share out. But normally the event happens with just our facilitators, me and Patty, and so a couple of other people that may help. But otherwise, there's no adults. The kids are doing all of the talking. They are doing the discussions, and we try to facilitate and help kind of give them some clarity around some of the work. And so here's how it starts. We create this agenda, right? Making sure that we know what the process is, talk a little bit about the data, what is the work the kids are actually going to do, and they actually do their findings. The last and most important part is that after the event, we gather all of this information, we put it into a slide deck, share it with the district equity leadership team, who will then pass it on to their administrators at each of the regions in hopes that they're going to improve some of their systems and take some of the solution-oriented ideas that the kids had to fruition. And we've seen that happen multiple times over the years too. And I'm already seeing some ideas for next year after yesterday's event. And so here's the process, right? So it's a volunteer basis with the schools who want to participate. We host the event outside of campus to kind of give the kids a different feel out of their school settings. There's field trip requests and also media release forms that are required. Logistics for how we're going to transport kids, because people will be dropping off the kids and not necessarily staying or staying in a separate room. So we let them know all of that as well. Breakfast and lunch is super important, especially because they're going to be with us for most of the day. We want to make sure that they're fed so that they can be energized to participate, but also giving them an opportunity to connect with the adults for a lunchtime as well. And then we have actually had some funding to be able to provide some gifts for the kids, some social emotional learning gifts. There's some poetry books, some paintings, some sketchbooks, different things like that for the students to be able to take home with them and thank you in gratitude of their participation to come out today. So here's how we set up the day specifically for students. So we do a welcoming and community building activity with the kids, kind of to get to know each other a little bit. And then we do the routine of the day, like why are they here and what their purpose is. And that's super critical because they're not quite sure what they're doing there. And then we identify roles and responsibilities. So each group is responsible to have a facilitator, a recorder, a timer, and a reporter. And we give the details of what that looks like. And then we have them set up their own, each group will set up their own agreements. As you can see, I went ahead and did some screenshots of some of them. One of them was everyone gets a chance to share, split the work evenly, because we know that sometimes working in groups, it doesn't go so well. One person is doing all the work. And then one of the big ones is respect each other's opinions was really cool. And we saw that yesterday too, making sure that they gave each other space to hear each other. So that's setting it up. Once we get started, we start with the really quick one is kind of a prediction, asking the students, what do you think the most behavior situations do you find at your school sites? And so the kids listed off these. And so we asked them for the top 3 behaviors, and that number 1949, that's the number of behaviors entered in our synergy system, 1949 to be exact. And then 289 of those were non-compliance. So that already told us that non-compliance, what does that mean exactly? What specific behavior are students exhibiting that they fall under the non-compliance? So when kids like, well, what does that mean? That started a great conversation and also a take back to our district to let them know our tier 1 practices when we enter minors, we're not entering them specifically on what behaviors we're seeing. So our district went back and said, hey, we need to fix our synergy system and our drop-down menus to be more explicit on what kind of behaviors are we looking at. So that was really, really interesting for the kids, and it let us know what we need to do differently. The next thing we did was, well, what is this data? What kind of questions are we asking? What are we looking for? So we give them an opportunity to kind of look at things, what captures their attention. I remember kids saying, what, kids get a minor for putting their heads on their desk? Why would they do that? Maybe they didn't get any sleep last night. So we continue having these topic of discussions for kids. And then we want to take that back also, like, what are we doing how are we meeting the needs in a tier 1 support if students do have their heads on their desks? Are we using restorative practices and inquiry based, asking them, hey, what do you need? Do you need 5 minutes? Maybe it's a 5-minute break. Maybe it's you didn't get any food this morning. Just really thinking about what kind of interventions and supports we're providing for those students before we even enter them into a minor situation in our system. So here are some of the responses to some of our groups, right? shows the most, what shows up the most, because there are 1,949 incidences. We can't have each group going through all of that. That's a lot. So we broke it up into the different categories for each kids. Not categories, mind you. The first 10, 15 pages goes to the one group, the next pages, and so on. So in this particular one, what shows up the most: leaving room without permission and doing other activities, kick, hit, bite. Now we have Monarch is a K through 12. So you'll see that a lot in our Monarch, not necessarily in our upper grades. So kids were asking, what does that mean? So they were reminded, oh, we have an elementary school. So in this particular instance, we asked them, what are their thoughts? Why do you suppose kids are leaving? Tell us, why do you think kids are leaving without permission? And so for some of them, it was to avoid work or class is boring. Some of them straight up said they're going to go smoke. To get attention. Some of them said to express themselves, to ditch class. And then one of the interesting ones, seek justice and get revenge, right? Doing other activities. And it was I had to ask the kids, explain that to us a little bit more. And they mentioned how it's kind of a defense mechanism. Somebody says something, well, now I'm going to say something back because now I'm trying to make sure that I'm going to make it right because you've hurt me. So that was an interesting take, having that conversation come up in our group discussions. Here's some other ones: caused or attempted or needed a physical threat. And even under the cursing was another one. They used bad day, problems from home. And so it was interesting to hear students say having a bad day, because sometimes, I know we do when we're adults. And so providing some of those tier 1 supports is like our SEL, right? How do we help kids navigate through that when they're feeling frustrated and having a bad day? So that also signifies, what do we need to do differently? Here's some other ones too. What are your thoughts on the non-compliance, not following teachers' directions? And so again, having a bad day came up. Attention seeking, and kids were straight up. They were saying, you know what, maybe they're on drugs, maybe they're high, maybe that's why they're just not paying attention. So also lets us know, hey, we need to be more vigilant and keeping an eye out on some of those things. And then, of course, this one was different because he talked about, what are your thoughts on negative comments to staff? And this particular program, this particular set of group of students, they work in a program where there was a lot of teacher turnover, quite a bit. Also their principal and leadership. And they got rid of a lot of their extracurricular activities. Now, these kids happen to live on campus. And so for them, it's the frustration. They don't have an outlet. They're seeing the staff, and that's their kind of off way of venting. And it was through staff. And so we let that school site know, hey, what other things can we provide for our students so we can minimize some of these comments to staff? So that was another way to be able to capturing data and hearing the student voices and providing that feedback back to our school sites.
And Inez, if I could just quickly interrupt,
yes.
What we also learned from that school site was that they weren't getting access to their recreation center. And so a couple of the students said, if we had more opportunities to release, vent physically, to work out and whatnot, and the district wasn't aware that wasn't open. So it was it was great information to share. And we have just a couple minutes left for our presentation, so we have time for Q&A.
Okay. So then administrative consequences also, right? So this one was really essential because we wanted to find out what are some of our strategies, our supports when you give out consequences, whether they're effective, not effective, or other options. And so going back to, again, listening to some of the feedback that we got, the other options, a lot of students were talking about giving space, incentives for good behavior, really going back to our tier 1 practices and how that really helps some of our students, the student choice. Send to the counselor was another one, checking in with staff, a lot of great ways that they felt that were more effective as opposed to just being sent out of class or going to the office. Now, one of the big things I do want to say is that talking with the principal was really essential. They felt like that wasn't effective. And I want to say that it isn't because there were a fear of the principals. I know who the principals are. They build relationships with students. And so kids are naturally, when they go and they see how disappointed maybe their principal is on their behaviors, they're more apt to be like, my bad, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll do better. And so I know that was something that was really critical. I thought was a great feature to take back to our school sites as well. And here are the actual, in their words for the kids, supporting the kids, even though it's hard. I'd like adults to know to be more attentive of students and the people they hang around. In this session, the improve our school, and I think we should get a turn to speak. We got some feedback on running more of these youth events. Same thing here. The session could improve our school, and make sure to listen to students and others. And it was really interesting that the kids were really saying, hey, I want adults to be able to hear us speak. I think this is critical for all students to be able to have their voices heard. And I really want to get to this one critical piece where it says, why don't we base our learning off of our dream thing or things that we want to learn? We have specific lessons we need to learn, but it'd be better if we could tie them into what we need to learn and with what we're interested in. And so with that, like I said, we use this now as part of our enrollment. So when kids come in, we right away put in like, what are your interests? What do you like? What would you like to learn? What kind of courses would you envision, so that we can capture that data and be able to maybe provide some of that for our students. And this is really great opportunity to really listen to our students. And so for us, we felt that we were at a 1.1, we were at a 4.0 on this. We would be, I should say, we haven't actually gone through the 3.0 yet, but we would be definitely in the student engagement of 4.0 because of all of the things that we're gathering. We're getting students together, we're getting some feedback, we're hearing their voices. We're also sending it back to our district leaders, and who are now sending it back to the different school sites and programs, and then seeing them changes and implemented over the years. And I think we ourselves even changed some of our the way we do things in our student event based on the feedback we got as well, reminding kids like, hey, so before this was like this, but we heard your voice and now here's where we're at. So I want to share like what is the really big impact on this. And so we want students to move from just sharing opinions to actually helping make decisions, right? We want the school practices to improve school practices because they're informed by real student experiences. And when students feel connected and valued, behavior and engagement improve. And so lastly, so we just want to make some recommendations if you're interested in doing something like that, of bringing your youth voice together. Build a representative student group, right? You move from the feedback to co-designing. It's providing those ongoing structure opportunities, and closing the loop is essential. If you said you're going to do this, make sure that you come back and say, here's what we did with what you said, right? We strengthen the adult capacity because not everyone's clear on how do we work with students? How do we really listen and not interject our own, what do we want to happen, right? And so really integrating student voice into the core of our systems. And for those of you who are already doing, it's always room for improvement, right? So we want to move students, especially those that are left out, right? We want to have more of that, continually, not just listen, but to help them make those kinds of decisions. We want to use real data to help students, make these decisions, but also understand what the data is, because we have to do some of that. Like, what do these mean? What is the data telling us, and what does it mean? And so making sure that we teach our students about that. Make those changes and show that their voice matters. So it isn't enough just to hear their voice, but they want to see what's action. So bring it back to them, making sure that they understand what happened next. Helping adults learn to listen and to work with students is critical. And then also, lastly, like, lead your meetings in a way that helps students feel like they have a voice and that they feel safe and heard. All right. And I think that was it.